Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good morning. Welcome to Financial Issues. We're so glad that you joined us today. Financial Issues is a ministry that helps to educate people about financial issues from a biblical worldview. So we talk about all things stewardship, but we tend to have a real focus on what we call defunding darkness, which is biblically responsible investing, where we screen out companies who are funding the dark agendas of this world, like abortion, pornography, the LGBTQ agenda, and we make that investment strategy that we consider to be an act of worship to the Lord, showing Him that we recognize that He owns everything. We make this strategy available to those who partner with us on our website at financialissues.org for just $132 a year. We give you asset allocation models that you can follow. We give you weekly commentary that's only available to the partners, a monthly partner conference call, and a weekly buy list so that you can fill out those asset allocation models and be your own portfolio manager, knowing that you're not supporting any of the garbage that some companies fund. We call that defunding darkness. And then our second mission is to fund the light, to encourage you to be a joyful, generous, and obedient giver with the resources that God has trusted you with. So, find out more about our ministry at financialissues.org. On today's show, we are going to get to your calls and questions. If you want to be the first caller in the queue, dial the number now. It's 610-363-1110. While we wait for your call, we're going to get started with some of the latest economic headlines about housing, tariffs, and Stargate. So just yesterday, a fresh round of housing data was released. According to the Mortgage Bankers Association, the average mortgage rate for a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage in the U.S. fell to only 7.02% for the week of ending February 17th, and it was down 5 basis points from 7.09 in the previous week. Now, this is the first decline in mortgage rates this month, although mortgage borrowing costs remain close to May highs. The decline tracks lower Treasury yields after a perceived better than expected inflation data read that we got last week that has indicated that the Fed still has room to cut interest rates, but it probably won't happen until later this year. The large home builders are under pressure. Been parsing through some of the comments that they're making in their earnings release. This is earnings season right now, so we're getting to read some of the things that management is saying about their business results. Their margins continue to be under pressure because they are building homes, but they're having in order to attract buyers, they're having to buy down mortgage rates, these 7% mortgage rates, because a good majority, somewhere close to 80% of those who have mortgages have rates under 5%. So in order to get someone to get a 7% mortgage, they're having to deploy some of their resources to buy down those mortgage rates to make housing affordable. So with all of the executive orders and policy announcements coming out from the Trump administration, what is the Trump card for housing? Well, Donald Trump has signed support for the housing industry through several initiatives. On his first day in office, he signed executive orders that were aimed at reducing housing costs by cutting regulations that contribute to higher consumer prices. These actions are intended to lower housing and energy expenses, which are significant components of household budgets. Lowering overall cost, I guess, would allow more room in consumers' budgets to buy a home. He also announced his intention to nominate Bill Pulte, a private equity executive, as director of FHFA, the Federal Housing and Finance Agency, which oversees Freddie and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which play critical roles in the U.S. housing finance system. During his campaign, Trump proposed policies to make federal land available for federal construction in order to increase housing supply, because that's part of the problem that have caused housing prices to rise so much, is that there's a shortage of supply. There's fewer houses on the market. There are golden handcuffs that exist because those who have mortgages have very, very good rates, some under 3%, and they're not willing, so they have these golden handcuffs that handcuff them to their homes because they're not willing to move and get another mortgage rate of 7%. Trump also, during his campaign, suggested creating tax incentives for home buyers. Very much different than what Kamala proposed, and cutting unnecessary regulations on home construction, making government smaller, getting their finger off of the private sector, cutting red tape. Now, to my knowledge, we haven't seen any deliverables on this yet, but the real problems with housing are inventory, which could be helped by some of the things that Trump can do. But inflation is still going to have to be recontained before the Fed can cut rates further. So, tracking the CME FedWatch tool, which surveys macroeconomic experts about when they see rate cuts coming by the Fed, the odds aren't very good until sometime close to May or June of this year that we'll actually see another rate cut. Now, mortgage rates are really more tied to the long-term Treasury rate than they are to the short-term rate, which is the one that the Fed controls. But you've also got insurance cost as a component of housing. Those have been inflated those have gone up as a result of inflation, because it costs insurance companies more to pay their claims, because it costs more to buy the components that if you have damage to your home and you have to rebuild it, those building supplies cost more. That's inflation. So therefore that gets passed along to policyholders in the form of higher insurance rates. And we also have property taxes that are another component. So as we've seen housing prices increased 40 to 50%, property taxes in most states are based on the value of your home. So your property taxes are going up as well. Tariffs is another issue that's front and center that if you turn on financial news, you're going to hear about that probably at least once an hour. But my take so far on the tariffs, and there's news coming out every single day that can change the trajectory of what's going to happen. But, in my opinion right now, tariffs are a negotiating tool for President Trump. They probably will have, little to no real impact on inflation. The big problem with inflation is government spending. And Trump has vowed to, get that under control. I think it'll probably take some time to do that. But, if anybody can get it done, I think it's the Trump administration. Using these tariffs will likely be successful for the Trump administration to help America get a fair deal with the rest of the world in our trade relationships. I think the latest, and who knows, it's minute by minute around here, but a 10% proposal on China across the board. That has really resulted in Chinese stocks trading down here recently and weakening even more the yuan, the Chinese currency. The currency markets have really been the main absorber of the tariff comments rather than the stock markets. So the tariffs that actually get imposed will help to fill the coffers of the U.S. Treasury and potentially ease the burden that U.S. taxpayers have been paying to fund the government and reduce deficit spending. So, not only has the government been spending every single penny that it's collected in taxes, the most recent budget deficit was somewhere around the $2 trillion mark. In addition to that, AI stocks got a bump higher this week as Trump announced a joint venture between SoftBank, Oracle, and OpenAI that he has dubbed as Stargate. So there are plans to build data centers for OpenAI, with the involved companies committing $100 billion right away, with an additional $500 billion over the next 4 years. That's a big deal. We got to take a break, but when we come back, I'm going to finish up my thoughts about that, and we're going to get right to your calls and questions. 610-363-1110 is the number to call. I'm your host, Shana.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
My name is Reagan Gardner, and I am in the 4th grade. Last year, I wanted to be like everybody else. I thought I had to act different, look different, and be different to be cool. When I joined Crossroads, I learned that God loves me just the way that I am.
Help reach more kids like Reagan with the hope of the gospel. To learn more about Crossroads Kids Club and how you can get involved, visit reachourschools.com.
If a woman sees her baby on ultrasound, it doubles the likelihood that she'll choose life. And on top of that, we share the gospel of Jesus Christ with her. This is why you should support preborn. The donations that you give actually make a difference. Last year, 59,000 babies were saved because of what you have done and with your generosity.
To find out how you can support the life-saving mission of preborn, go to preborn.com/FISM.
Welcome back, folks. Still coming to you from the homestead here in Texas due to our unusual cold weather. So that was our little alarm letting me know that somebody's coming down the driveway. Thanks for tuning in here. And we're going to get right to your calls. If you want to get your call on today's show, you should call right now, 610-363-1110, because we're going to have Craig Haugaard live in the next segment. So if you've got a question, we want to get it answered for you today. 610-363-1110 is the number you dial. You should have that on speed dial.
Good idea. Yep.
So I want to finish up my thoughts real quick on Stargate, and then we'll jump right into the call if we get one, but then we'll move to the stewardship verse of the day. So I mentioned before the break, AI stocks are moving higher on the announcement of Stargate, which is a joint venture between SoftBank, Oracle, and OpenAI. And they are planning to build data centers for OpenAI in the U.S. They've committed $100 billion right away, with an additional $500 billion over the next 4 years. Trump was all smiles as he announced that. It was a great thing. So far, there are 10 data centers that are currently under construction in the U.S., with plans to build a total of 20 more. The technology partners that are named so far, you may recognize at least one or two of these from past appearances on our buy list, not current, but NVIDIA, Microsoft, ARM, and Oracle are the obvious beneficiaries at this point. So Stargate included a data center in Texas that is to be operated by Oracle and used by OpenAI that was already started under the Biden administration. I don't see those White House posts about how all the great things that Biden did anymore, but maybe they're just dropped into oblivion. But, you know, the peaceful transition of power from an overbearing, regulation-heavy, pro-big government administration, which is the Biden administration, to an America First, deregulation, pro-business administration is what has attracted this kind of investment in the American economy. I got mixed feelings about AI in general, but the investment in the economy will be good for business and for the U.S. Economy. Positive changes to the regulatory environment. That means less red tape, a drill energy policy that will make it possible to get the kind of energy that AI requires. AI is going to require a lot more energy. And those are some of the things, those are the characteristics of the Trump administration that really have attracted this huge corporate investment into the American economy. Now, companies, we're seeing this play out right before our very eyes. Companies, smart companies, just want to be in an environment where they can execute a great business plan and be rewarded for their entrepreneurial skills and not have all of the shareholder return taxed away so that the government can give it to other businesses to bribe them to come here, like we saw in the Biden administration. Biden administration gave us the CHIPS and Infrastructure Act. The CHIPS Act was set to spend $280 billion over a decade to bribe companies to move here, using taxpayer dollars to try to get companies to come and locate in the U.S. and do business here. Trump just said, hey, we're going to make it conducive to running a successful business in the United States, and we get a $500 billion commitment. So companies like Taiwan Semi and Intel took the government bait under the Biden administration in the CHIPS Act and have started projects here for those chip companies. But other companies just, kind of tested the waters, but, they hesitated to commit fully because of all of the very lengthy bureaucratic process and, uncertainties around the implementation. I mean, who really wants to be business partners with a bloated and inefficient government who seeks to make them pay what they call their fair share, but what I call their unfair share, and tax them into submission so the wealth can be redistributed by government bureaucrats. Now, Musk weighed in on this as well on X, formerly known as Twitter, and expressed his disdain for the deal. Financial viability of the $500 billion investment in the Stargate project. So Musk specifically stated on X they don't actually have the money, and then further claimed that SoftBank has well under $10 billion secured. I have that on good authority, Elon Musk said. Now, this skepticism led to a big public exchange on X between Musk and OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, who have a somewhat of a long-going underlying feud about they were once business partners, and then separated on that. There's been lawsuits between them too, and so that's been an interesting thing to sort of unfold. Last little bit of data here. Economic data for the day. Initial jobless claims, 223,000. This is the weekly number that comes out. 3,000 above expectations. And the week before, we saw continuing claims rise to a hair under 1.9 million, which happens to be the highest figure since November of 2021. So this is just more, another data point, a piece of evidence that the hiring pace has definitely slowed. All right. Seth, you want to read our stewardship verse of the day? I'm trying to reconnect on.
Sure, Shana. Yeah, we got. So this is Leviticus 19:13, which says, "You shall not cheat your neighbor nor rob him. The wages of him who is hired shall not remain with you all night until morning." You know, Shana, this passage really highlights specific instructions for how to treat hired workers. So for many of us who might be business owners, this would apply to us for sure. The first part, though, is really where the meat of this is, though, is that we must deal generously with our neighbors. So this applies to everyone. Cheating and robbing, this actually is a sinful attempt to play God. We see our own needs and desires as far more important than other people's. And so the antidote to that, of course, as is so often in the scripture, we're talking about our finances, is to be generous. And so I would hope that we would do that today. Shana, I do know that
absolutely. I got a few thoughts to weigh in there too.
For sure. Go ahead.
The verse really commands that fairness and justice in dealing with others is a guiding principle. A chosen people that were hand-selected by God to reveal His love and mercy and character, and most importantly, to reveal the Savior of the world, Jesus Christ. God taught His chosen people through His revealed word to Moses and the judges and the prophets, and today through the Bible, how to act like Him. Because when people act like God rather than trying to be God, others are drawn to God. Because God is love, and when we follow His instructions, we display our love for God and for others, which is how Jesus summed up the entire law, how to master or how to act out the entire law. Specifically, the scripture, prohibits defrauding and robbing one's neighbor, and emphasizing, how to fairly pay hired workers promptly without holding wages overnight. But at the heart of the matter, we see God's concern for fairness, honesty, compassion, and the protection of vulnerable individuals, particularly workers. So these verses underscore the importance of treating others with dignity and respect, and encouraging us to align our daily actions with principles of justice and righteousness. Because at the end of the day, none of what we have is truly ours. It's all His, and our appropriate response to that fact is that we use it just as God would.
Amen.
All right, I think we might have time here to get to a caller.
Yep.
Can't read.
We've got,
is that Joseph?
Yeah, Joseph is calling from Florida, Shana. Joseph, good morning. You're live on Financial Issues.
Oh, good morning, Seth and Shana.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am an income investor. I'm 82 years old. My wife's 10 years younger. We are low in consumer staples and consumer discretionary. There are a couple of guys there that would fit income investor, but the yield is very low, even though one of the positions is growth in income. Should I buy the low-yielding position just to capture the growth part? Would these positions not be for me, since I'd like to get at least 4%?
Yeah, so I know in consumer staples, off the top of my head, there is one of them that pays a 4% yield. So I definitely wouldn't call that a low yield. I think that would fit very well in an income portfolio and give you the opportunity for some growth as well. But and kind of the goal as an income investor is to choose those stocks that are paying, I would say, 4% or more, not only the stocks, but the preferred stocks and others. So I think that one would certainly be a good fit. we're always evaluating and looking for new ads there. We definitely keep in mind that there are, there's 20-year-olds all the way to 82-year-olds like yourself that are building portfolios using our buy list. So we try to, keep a good variety there.
Okay. Now, also, you had us holding up on energy. I'm a little low on energy. Could I buy that, or are we still on hold on energy?
No, if you're light in energy, go ahead. I think that's going to be, especially in the income portfolio, that's going to be one of the areas that'll stay at least the same or go higher. Well, thanks for calling today. Thanks, Joseph.
Thank
we
you,
appreciate
Joseph.
your partnership.
Yes, sir.
Sorry if I had to cut him off there. I know we're coming up on a hard break here. Folks, I wanted to remind you, tomorrow is Bible study with Seth, and he's going to be in Daniel 2, verses 14 through 18. If you want to get a jump on that reading and dial in the morning, you may have gotten an email from him already on how to log in, but if you hadn't, it's for everybody, not just partners. Just go to our website and you can find the information on how to join. And stay tuned, because Craig Haugaard is coming on live next on Financial Issues. I'm your host, Shana Burt. Make sure that you have our phone app or know how to get to our website, financialissues.org, or catch us on podcast for the entire 1 hour show.
In the last 10 to 15 years being in ministry, being married, something that has been constant in our lives is Samaritan Ministries. As we've moved, we've had babies, we've had different things come up, we have just been able to rely on Samaritan in ways that we never really even thought about before becoming members.
Our heart's desire is to plant roots and be in a place for a really long time. It's how we were raised. We see the benefits of that, but we also see the open-handedness of being used by the Lord wherever He calls, because we just assumed when we started pursuing church planting, the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. And with the Lord, sometimes you find out it looks a lot more like this. And yet, Samaritan was with us through the entire thing.
We didn't have to look into, we have to change insurances now because we've moved states or whatever the case may be. And it's just been a real blessing to us in different phases of life.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Colleen.
We're the Gen X.
And we're Samaritan members.
If you don't get life right, you're not going to get all the other issues correct, period. It is the issue that impacts every other issue. Life is the central part of what keeps this republic together. It is the contract that the founding fathers passed down through multiple generations. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You don't have life, you don't have a republic. There is a temptation out there right now. And I want to just tell you we must resist it. There's this temptation that we cast this issue aside. How does that honor God? It doesn't. And if it wasn't for preborn, I would be super just confused and depressed, because there has never been, in my opinion, a more disjointed time in the pro-life movement. We need a machine to go up against the Planned Parenthood beast. Like, we have to play offense against the pro-abortion forces in this country, okay? We have to play offense. And preborn does it in this compassionate, merciful, godly way that is just so inspiring and amazing.
My wife and I, we moved into this neighborhood. We had some experience with Crossroads Kids Club. We had served at another club. We kind of thought to ourselves, like, it would be really, really cool for us to actually bring in a club that was able to share the love of Jesus with kids directly into the school. And so we started our Crossroads at Hilltop.
Crossroads is amazing. You can learn all kinds of things about God. That He loves all of us. He died on the cross to pay for our sins. That He will help me in every way.
There is just such tremendous opportunity to reach kids in some of these areas that just aren't being reached.
Sometimes I pray every night. When I feel alone sometimes, God is right there sitting next to me. I can rely on Him no matter what happens.
To learn more about Crossroads Kids Club and how you can get involved, visit reachOurSchools.com.
Securities offered through GA Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only, and do not necessarily represent those of GA Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it, and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues, everybody. Good to be here with you today. As Shana just mentioned, we do have Bible study tomorrow, so I hope you'll consider joining us in the morning, 6:30 Eastern Time. By the way, if you're a partner, you can get past Bible studies as well. So if the 6:30 time is just not convenient for you, please do consider listening to the Bible study on the Bible Study Archives page. So that's under the partner page on the partner side of the website, financialissues.org. Go to partners. Underneath that, you'll go to Bible Study Archives. You can get all the past Bible studies, including tomorrow's after it happens. But if you want to join live, a great thing to do for sure. All right, folks, special guest here, one of my absolute favorites, a dear friend of mine in our ministry, Craig Haugaard, our financial issues ag expert, is back on the program with me. Craig, welcome back, buddy, and thank you for joining the program and making it just sound so much more brilliant. You are the man.
Seth, it's always like Christmas morning when I get to talk to you.
It is.
We were highlight of my life,
dude. It's the same with me. I mean, we were just talking off the air about just how brilliant it is. So I need to be careful. We're of course joking, folks, but it is great to have Craig on as always. On a serious note, brother, I'd love to just hear an update on how you're doing. Our listeners have been praying for you, and we're going to continue to do that. How can we be praying for you as you're still in kind of this recovery mode?
Yeah, I guess this week, as you know, Seth, it's been a little rough.
Yeah.
I think just the residual swelling from the last surgery is going down a lot more than I had thought. That the pain wouldn't be that bad, and
absolutely,
and the swelling would not take 2 months to go away. It would be awesome. But and I really do appreciate the prayers. So they've been they've made a big difference. I truly believe that.
Absolutely, man. We will keep them coming for sure. Thank you, brother. Well, let's turn our attention now, man, to what's going on in the agricultural world. So we're now a couple days into the second Trump administration, and I do know this could have a big impact on our farmers and ranchers. This is something that we've talked about in the last couple months, sort of preemptively wondering what would happen. Now we know what happened, obviously, in the election, and now Trump has begun. What impact, Craig, do you expect to see from a second Trump term? And this is specifically talking about having an impact on farmers and ranchers. Let's just kind of start there. What do you think could happen?
Yeah, I think, in the past year or so, we've talked a fair amount about property rights issues and the things that have gone on around that. I expect that we will see an improvement and more of a recognition of property rights and less ability of the government to intrude on your private land.
Sure.
I think that's coming. In the past, we've also talked about foreigners buying up U.S. lands and in some pretty strategic areas that at some points where probably is a defense problem. I think we're going to see the door slammed on that ability as well. And I really think we'll probably see an inability of foreigners to buy U.S. farmland. So I think those are all very positive.
Definitely.
The tariff thing is going to be interesting. But before I get to tariffs, I think one of the things that you signed an executive order right away declaring a national energy emergency. And as part of that emergency declaration, it included a provision to allow the sale of E15 year-round, which is something that the corn industry has been pushing for years. And so that was seen as a very positive thing for corn prices. Now, obviously, we'd like to see that become law, and executive orders can be overturned, but I think that was a step in the right direction. We also, I think the expectation is, we know that the Inflation Reduction Act funds have been frozen.
Yeah.
What I think that means is that the 45Z clean fuel production credit is probably dead. And that was a a credit that was going to be paid to the producers of the, what was it, ethanol or biodiesel, that type of thing.
Yeah.
In the hopes that they would pay the farmers, that some of that money would trickle down to the farmers. So I had kind of some issues with that to start with. They were trying to basically force people to use certain farming practices that may or may not be good. And some of these sustainable cases, I'll never forget one meeting I was at on the sustainable issue, and farmers that were already doing the action were not going to be rewarded. And I asked about that, and the guy said, well, we want to force the others to do what we think's right. And use the word force, which really rubbed me the wrong direction. We, surprising enough, did not end up doing business with those folks. But,
right.
So I think there's a kind of a mixed bag. Probably the biggest issue that really has people watching it is what's he going to do with tariffs?
Yeah.
We saw on Inauguration Day when tariffs were not imposed immediately, we saw the market really surge. I think beans were up 30-some cents a day, and corn had a real strong day as well. I do think he's still looking at, from what we're hearing, maybe 10% tariffs on China and 25% on Canada and Mexico.
Yeah.
From an agricultural standpoint, those are our three biggest trading partners. The last numbers I heard, 2023 was the last firm numbers I had in that year. Our ag exports to China came in at $33.7 billion. Mexico was at $28.2 billion, and in Canada, $27.9 billion. And then number 4 was EU, back out at just basically $12 billion. So by far our three biggest trade partners or markets for agricultural exports. So tariffs would have I think a damaging impact on exports. Now, last time he did that, I happened to be, it was a fluke deal, but I was actually with Sonny Perdue, was the Secretary of Agriculture, the morning that the tariffs were announced. Last time, tariffs against China. And Sonny had told me at that point that President Trump had promised that he would protect the farmers, and he knew it was going to have an impact on him, and that he had things in place to protect them, and that pretty much held true. And so I know that he's aware of the impact it would have. I'm sure that he goes that route. There will be some things in place that will help protect our farming folks as well. So
good.
But that's probably the biggest unknown, is if those tariffs will be imposed, and if so, are they going to be as large as what the numbers we're hearing right now?
Yeah, sure. Craig, thank you for keeping us up to speed on that, brother. Hey, we got a few questions that came in on our chat just now as we were talking. If you're all right with answering some of these live here, Robert from Texas was asking.
Mind me sounding stupid, we'll give it a shot.
Not even possible. I don't think you've ever sounded stupid in your life, Craig. Robert was the first one from Texas, and Robert's saying, just wondering if you have any updates about the bird flu. I know it's something that we have talked about. Can you give us any updates on that? Any new cases of it? Anything like that?
I'll be honest with you, I haven't in the last couple of weeks looked at that real closely.
Okay.
I did.
Could be good news, perhaps.
Well, I think we saw our first human fatality within the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
But in all honesty, I apologize to Robert, but I haven't watched it real closely. This time of year, that it tends to die out, so to speak. It may be a poor choice of words, but it tends to get spread in the spring and the fall when you've got the wild, the bird migratory, the wild birds migrating, and they're spreading it along the migratory path. So this time of year, we do just naturally tend to see kind of a reduction in it. So I think the real question will be, come spring and migration takes off again, if we'll see it rear its ugly head once again, or if perhaps it's kind of working through the wild flocks as well. There does seem to be somewhat of a seasonality to it, though. This last couple of years has been a longer and more severe outbreak than what has normally been experienced in the past. So.
Sure. Okay. So that could be something that we can certainly be, keeping an eye on there. But no, that's awesome, Craig. Thank you. And then John from Alabama. And this might need to be a quick one here, Craig, but he's thinking about purchasing a breed red cow. What would be a good price for him? And I don't know if that's something that you might be able to answer there. What might be like a fair price?
I didn't hear these planning on purchasing a what?
A breeding cow.
Oh, a breeding cow.
Yep.
Boy, I would have to do some homework on that.
Sure.
There's obviously regional markets and regional differentials. There's some other questions we need to ask around that, but
definitely
we can get offline and look into that a little bit.
Yeah.
We can probably get a number for it fairly close, but
definitely.
off the top of my head, I couldn't do justice to that.
Yep. John, in the chat, if you could send me your email address, and then I can talk with Craig offline afterwards. We can send you some of the info that we have there. Boy, Craig, as always, just not enough time to talk about. We'll have to save for next time some of the things that we had teed up. Of course, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well on some of Trump's deportation plans, how that might affect the labor force in the ag world. But we've run out of time here, so we'll have to save it for next time, brother. Man, we appreciate you so much. And just thank you, Craig, for the work that you do for us. And again, man, we are praying for you continually. So thank you, brother.
I appreciate that, Seth. Thanks a lot.
Yes, sir. Absolutely, man. God bless you. Folks, we got more financial issues coming up right after this break. You don't want to miss it. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this.
It's up to us to stand up and say, enough is enough. All of this unbiblical stuff that's going on, whether it's abortion or transsexual or LGBTQ, widespread pornography, human trafficking. Bottom line, it's still up to us. If we stop investing in these corporations that are trying to destroy us, sooner or later they're going to wake up.
To learn more about biblically responsible mutual funds and ETFs, go to timothyplan.com.
If a woman sees her baby on ultrasound, it doubles the likelihood that she'll choose life. On top of that, we share the gospel of Jesus Christ with her. This is why you should support preborn.
Then they sat me down. If you were to die today, do you think you would go to heaven? And I was like, no. Keeping the child was my first stepping stone. And ever since then, God has cleaned me up from the inside out.
Help support women in need. Go to preborn.com/FISM.
Pharrell came to Crossroads as a fourth grader. His name had been brought to my attention by the school principal. She was concerned about the direction he was heading.
I remember I wasn't the best kid. I got into trouble a lot.
He became a very active part of Crossroads Kids Club.
Mr. Engel, he was the leader that really impacted my life in so many ways. I honestly didn't want Crossroads to end.
We would invite all the students to come to our youth group here at Waterfront.
I felt God saying, come home, come to me. It felt like I was set free.
And I'll never wait to baptize Pharrell.
I hug Mr. Engel. I don't know if he understands. I'm truly, thankful to have him through the whole journey. If it wasn't for Crossroads, I probably wouldn't be in the place that I am right now. I wouldn't be a follower of Christ.
Help reach more kids like Pharrell with the hope of the gospel. Visit reachOurSchools.com.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Thanks so much for staying with us here on Financial Issues, folks. Great show today we've had a lot of fun here. Good to hear from Craig. John, thanks for sending me your email in the chat, by the way, brother. I'll send you a response later. And for all of you, anytime we have Craig on or Twyla or any of those guests, if you got questions for them, put them in there. I'd love to be able to relay those for you and hopefully get your questions answered. One of the beautiful things about this show, I feel like, and obviously I'm biased towards it because it's a show that I co-host and help run, but we pride ourselves on being a show that is an educational show, and we want to teach you and we want you to be able to learn. I feel like I learned something new hosting the show, and so for you to be able to learn as well, it's just a great thing. So if you got questions, ask them. Please feel free to. Let's take a quick look here, folks, at the markets, what they did yesterday. So Tuesday we had a solid day. Strong earnings reports and financials, big tech. Remember, Shana said these two could be among some of the big winners of 2025. And we were talking about that in the chat a little bit, actually. Financials and big tech are among them who could potentially have some good years. Of course, that's not a guarantee, but just reading what could potentially happen. The markets did continue their upward trajectory yesterday, so that's Wednesday in the aftermath of this now second Trump term. By midday, major indices all in positive territory. This time, it was the tech-heavy NASDAQ leading the way. If you remember, Tuesday, the Dow Jones led the way. Yesterday, it was the NASDAQ. Both NVIDIA and Oracle, again, Shana had mentioned those earlier, they were instrumental in driving up the tech sector and helping the NASDAQ, of course. Strong earnings as well helped the markets also. We'll actually get to a few of those in just a moment. By late afternoon, same deal. Trump optimism is just continuing to win the day. At least it was yesterday. And by yesterday's closing bell, all three indices in positive territory comfortably. The Dow Jones was the lowest at about 0.3%. S&P 500 did hit a new record high at 0.6%, and then the NASDAQ soared well above 1 full percentage point at about 1.25%. The pre-markets this morning were somewhat mixed, and that's where the markets have opened. Not much change here. The Dow Jones is the winner right now. It's up about 0.1%. The S&P 500 is just below the flat line, and the tech-heavy NASDAQ is a little bit further down at around 0.33% in the negative territory, excuse me. So that's what the markets are looking like right now as they have opened. We did get some earnings reports out yesterday. I think we'll have to save those, though, for later because we got a good question here. Sam, why don't we get to this question from Anise? We got this question in on the Ask Shana portal, and it's one that we can address here. So let's tee that one up.
Yes, indeed. We have this question from Anise or Anis. I don't know. I love the candy flavor, so if that's what we're referencing, it's a good one. Well, she asks, FISM primarily screens for companies who use stockholders' money to support pornography, abortion, and alternative lifestyles, aka LGBTQ+. What else do you screen for a company to be BRI? Thanks so much. Love you all.
And we appreciate you so much, Anise. Thank you for that encouragement. And it's a great question. Let me say right now, I see your commitment to being biblically responsible, and I love that. So great job with that. I do believe, we all believe here at the ministry, the Lord's going to bless you for that. So we screen out a variety of different things. You mentioned probably, Sam, in my opinion, I think the things that she mentioned are the big three.
At least right now they are. Yeah, they're the things we tend to talk about the most on the show.
Most companies that fail screens seem to be involved in one of these three. The leader seems to be the LGBTQ stuff. Abortion's a big one, and so is pornography. So those are the three things that kind of keep us the busiest as we're looking at these companies. The majority of companies that are using shareholder dollars to promote wicked agendas are involved in these things. But there are others. There are others also. Let me give you a couple of them. Number one is gambling. So the gambling industry is pretty prevalent. We don't often think about it a lot, but this is just companies using shareholder dollars to support the unbiblical practice of betting. Yes, I said unbiblical. We believe that gambling is wrong. We believe that it is not a good use of your money. We believe that not only is it foolish, but it's also actually an attempt to gain wealth both through a get-rich-quick scheme, but also through illicit means. That's direct contradiction to Proverbs 13:11, which says that wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but wealth grown little by little will increase. So it's a biblical principle there that gambling directly contradicts. We screen out companies that are involved in the gambling industry. We don't want your money to be involved in that in any way, shape, or form. Also, this is another big one, human rights abuses. So this would be human trafficking, sex trafficking, genocide. It's kind of related, and this is an interesting one for you, Anise. It's related to pornography. We don't often think about this. The pornography industry is in many ways a human rights abuse. The images on those pornographic sites, many times they are girls that have also been trafficked. And we don't often think about that, but the pornography industry is oftentimes, it's not always, but oftentimes it is also a form of human trafficking too, especially child pornography, which is just absolutely grotesque. Also, one we don't think about is terrorism. You don't often think about companies being involved in terrorism, but it would be arms dealing towards terrorists, different things like that. All different human rights abuses. We want no part in any injustice that is done against fellow image bearers of God. We've heard different things, different whisperings from certain companies about being involved in human rights abuses, using child labor, different things like that. Your money's not going to be involved in any of that stuff. So human rights abuses would be another one. And then one more is anti-family entertainment. So anti-family entertainment, really specifically, this is related to the entertainment industry. It's a promotion of overtly anti-Christian values or anti-Christian lifestyles or vices in the media. It's related heavily to LGBTQ screens. Oftentimes you'll see companies that we screen out, for example, Netflix and Disney. One of the screens that they fail on is anti-family entertainment because they have a Pride Month collection, for example. But they also might have softcore pornography in some of their movies. So that would be another way that this would fail. This is how anti-family entertainment is kind of related to some of those other ones. It's connected. And you can see some of these, failures are connected to each other. I mentioned pornography and human rights abuses. Anti-family entertainment is another one. So we don't want your money being involved in any kind of entertainment that's going to promote and indoctrinate, especially children, to believe that ungodly agendas are somehow right or good. So, Sam, am I missing any? Those seem to be kind of the big ones, I think.
Yeah, I think those are all the major ones.
Yeah.
I think you might have covered every single one of them. So,
yeah,
we cover a broad range of issues, and you might be asking, so if you cover all these things, why is it we so much hear about mainly abortion and LGBT stuff? Well, that mainly has to do with the cultural situation we're in right now. Companies that aren't involved in these things are feeling cultural pressure to involve themselves in abortion and LGBT issues. That doesn't necessarily apply to things like gambling and pornography and human rights abuses. There's not cultural pressure to do those things. If you're a gambling company, you didn't start as some other company and then slowly behind the scenes get into gambling. That didn't happen with companies like FanDuel or DraftKings. They were gambling companies up front.
That's kind of who they are.
Yes, so it's much easier.
The same way.
It's easier to screen those things out up front. These other things tend to slip into the companies through the back door, and that tends to be why we talk about them more, because companies on our buy list or broad list sometimes can start out not doing those things, but over time slip into that stuff, and then we want to expose it and explain why we're taking them off our lists.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sam, you're exactly right. As biblically responsible investors, it's a wise thing for us to do to keep a pulse on what is happening in the culture. So if you're a biblically responsible investor, it's good for you to know, okay, the reality is most of the companies that I'm trying to avoid because they're involved in wicked agendas will likely be involved in either LGBTQ stuff or abortion or pornography, because that kind of seems to be, like you said, Sam, the way that the culture is moving, especially in the last 4 years. Now, we could see a change in that in these next 4 years. We're seeing a lot of good things coming out of the Trump administration. We could also maybe see some things that might actually change the power of balance when we're talking about biblically responsible investing. Maybe we'll see more gambling companies, and we'll have to screen out against those. Maybe we'll see more human rights abuses. I hope we don't. I hope we don't see more of any of this stuff. I hope we see less of all of it. But it's just a good idea to be ready just in case, to have a pulse on what's happening. That's part of why we're here. We're trying to give you that pulse of what's happening. We do our, BRI exams, and we talk about other things like that. It's to give you a sense of what's going on, to see what, the work that we're trying to do to screen out these companies so that you can be confident that your money is not getting involved in any of that stuff.
Yeah, well said. And gambling's a big one, actually, because you're seeing that more and more with the companies I mentioned. Sports betting is becoming
sports betting is huge. And, Sam, that's something I think we're going to keep an eye on, because, folks, the Super Bowl is in 3 weeks, and it's one of the largest. You're talking about sports betting. That's huge. Unfortunately, human rights abuses are really big around the Super Bowl, too. There's a lot of whispers and talks of human trafficking and different things like that happening. But we'll be keeping an eye on that one for sure. So anyway, Anise, it's a great question. Our goal at the end of the day is that not a single cent of your money, not 1 cent, not one dime, not a nickel of your money that you are investing, that you've chosen to put to work, is being used to fund wicked agendas. The goal is that you can say with a clear conscience the following: I'm honoring God with the money He's given me. I'm honoring God with the money He's given me. And we do believe that if you choose to follow our investment models, that you will be doing that. We're doing the legwork. We're doing everything we can. We're putting all of our efforts here at the ministry, with the work that Sam's doing and the analytic team and Shana, putting all our work to making sure that we're presenting you good, solid companies that you can invest in, but also ultimately that they're companies that you can honor God with the money that He's given you. And so we're going to keep doing that, folks, for as long as we're on the air, for as long as we're a ministry. That's our promise to you, that we're going to continue to do that. So great question, Anise. Sam, thank you for your contributions to that as well. I appreciate it so very much. We've got a lot more headlines we could have gotten to today, but just not enough time once again in the live show. So grateful for all of you on the chat. I hope that you enjoyed it. And I do hope that you join us again for Bible study tomorrow, folks, 6:30 Eastern Time. We'll be in Daniel 2:14-18. For those of you who are interested in reading ahead, go ahead and do that, verses 14-18. God willing, Shana will be live tomorrow as well for the whole show. So make sure that you get your calls ready early. Get those calls in right at 9:05 Eastern Time. That's the perfect time to call. And we hope that you'll join us tomorrow. Until then, remember, everything you have belongs to the Lord. So let's be found good and faithful stewards with what he's given to us. God bless you all. Lord willing, we'll see you tomorrow for more.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.